So your grinning face then, you wanted to, you come on, that's a smug grin, you want to tell the White Lady story. Come on, let's do it, go for it, it's a great story.
Told it a million times.
Go on.
It diminishes with the telling.
Doesn't, come on, tell us the White Lady, why this spot, why here? Go on, tell us what it's all about.
I don't know why this spot, but apparitions of the so-called White Lady, the Dame Blanche, have been reported from the north-facing tower since at least the 1920s. But given that people only started writing about this place at the beginning of the 20th century, the apparitions were probably going on for hundreds of years before they were actually written down. I didn't believe in any of it. I thought it was a folkloric legend, as far out as Arthur's knight sleeping beneath the hill, or the idea that Merlin is still sleeping in a stone somewhere. But in the summer of 2007, myself and one other witness, a young witch who later turned against me, actually saw the apparition here in the tower room. It was during an eclipse of the moon. We had been in here in the tower watching the eclipse, and we had just started to leave the tower room when all of a sudden all the cows, all the vaches de Montsegur started to go crazy in the field underneath the castle, making these ridiculous sounds, which I guess were magnified by the alpine acoustics. There were such crazy sounds that we both started laughing. We didn't know what to make of it. And pretty much at that moment that all the cows started lowing at once, the wind dropped. There'd been a cold wind that had been blowing down from the slopes of the Pic de Saint Barthélemy, and suddenly the wind lulled and it was utterly silent. And just the sound of the cows, and this warm breeze started to blow from inside of the tower room. And as we felt the warm breeze, I turned back towards the tower room, and that's when we suddenly saw that there was a woman standing pretty much where I'm standing now. We'd been in here seconds before.
Right.
And the crazy thing is there's no other access to the room, there's no other door in here. Initially when I saw her, she was so solid, so real, that my first perception was that she must be a hippie or a goth lady or somebody dressed up in an elaborate costume. It also looked as if she was wearing UV paint. The effect was a bit like someone in a nightclub when the UV light is switched on, because she seemed to glow. And this phosphorescence, my initial thought is she must have some kind of phosphorescent paint on her body. I didn't want to intrude. It felt like I was witnessing something that I wasn't supposed to see. So I almost wanted to step back and leave her to it. But then as it came home to me that there was actually no door, no way into the tower room, I started to come to terms with the idea that we were looking at an apparition. There were two of us there, so I didn't have the excuse that I was simply having a mental aberration or that I was experiencing an acid flashback, because we were both seeing exactly the same thing, which was a very well-defined woman wearing some kind of hooded cloak or jalaba or mantle around her neck, which was a darker looking cloak, which gave the whole outline the kind of the appearance of a classic Marian apparition. Her body seemed to glow. She was clear enough that I was able to see the braids in her hair. I was able to see the sash, the girdle that was cross-tied around her waist. I was able to see the calfskin boots and the fact that she was wearing something, maybe a short sword or a long knife at the hip. And I was also able to tell that she was young. She was younger than me. I would suggest in her mid to late 20s, early 30s. Too young and too fierce to be Esclamande de Foi. Esclamande de Foi, the high priestess, the pacifist high priestess of the Cathars, who is supposed to have never died but to have transcended, to have turned into a dove, to have become the living symbol of the faith, who's often identified as the White Lady. Yet such an immediate identification was not possible, because in effect, I don't really think it was Esclamande de Foi. She seemed closer to a Valkyrie or some kind of deess, a goddess. But in later years, I've started to think of her as something like an avatar of Belisama, the Ibero-Celtic moon goddess who was worshipped here in times gone by. When I realized that we were facing an apparition, something that wasn't human, I began to cry, mostly out of gratitude, out of amazement that such a thing could be true, that I could be seeing something so impossible. And I realized that if she existed, if the White Lady existed, then maybe all the rest of the story was true. Maybe the Grail existed. Maybe Merlin really was sleeping in a rock somewhere. So my first response was to fall to my knees and to abase myself in front of her. Accordingly, I got a very good look at her calfskin boots. I was a little bit too frightened to look her too directly in the face, mostly because I was frightened I'd go mad or cease to exist if I actually looked her in the eyes. But what I do recall is that when she moved, the pebbles crunched underneath her boots, that she had weight and mass, and she seemed to be a real physical three-dimensional person, not just an illusion or a hologram. They seemed to be a genuine human being standing before us. And there also seemed to be something very crazily familiar about the whole thing, that sense of deja vu, as if somehow, somewhere, I had seen her before or experienced that moment before. The whole experience couldn't have lasted more than a few minutes. And at the end of it, she seemed to simply turn away and walk away into nowhere, this direction. There's no way out of the tower room.
What, just into the wall?
Yeah, it seemed as if she disappeared into the shadows or into the wall. And the crazy thing is both of us here in the tower room could hear her walking away after she was gone. Even though she was no longer in the room, we could still hear those boots crunching on the gravel as if she was walking away down a passageway. And she did it with such ease. It wasn't as if there was some kind of space-time portal or flash of light or anything. She simply walked off, and I heard crunch, 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 the sound of her boots walking away after she was no longer there, which is something which has, always haunted me. And as she walked away, again, all of the cows in the field went crazy. Again, there was the huge lowing and the mooing of the cattle, as if the cattle could feel it somehow. I don't know what that's about. I don't know why the cows could feel what was happening. I thought afterwards maybe it's some kind of electromagnetic spillage, electromagnetic pulse. Cattle are sensitive to EMP, but they could certainly feel it. They reacted each time when she came and when she left. And I guess that that episode effectively messed up my life forever, from the point of view that I couldn't deny what had happened. There were two of us there, we'd both seen it, and it also jives with dozens of other reports. The lady in the tower room has been reported since the 1920s, often with great certitude. Maurice Marg writes about it in his book, The Return of the Magi, aka Magicienne et Illumine. The Countess de Pujol-Murat, the mentor of Otto Rahn, claims to have seen her ancestor dozens of times in the tower room standing before her in the starlight, and talks about how proud it made her feel to see the spirit of her own ancestor. But I thought all of that was romantic bunk until I actually saw her and smelled her as well. We smelt her. We smelt a very sweet smell like roses or lilies, something which is akin to what they call the smell of sanctity in Marian apparitions. It could just be one end of the human olfactory spectrum. And I admit that also around the edges of the glow, around